Welcome to a look at LinkedIn and how you can grow your audience and influence in a much more gentle way than what you're probably thinking. It's a way, I guess, of you being able to grow your audience in a way that feels more natural. It feels more like it's less about you being a marketing hero and more about you being a person who wants to increase their audience and their influence as they're going along. My name is Dante St. James. Thanks for joining me this afternoon or this evening if you happen to be in Queensland. It's a little bit later. It's about 5:30 there. And if you're in Western Australia, I hope you finish work and you're ready to get on with some learning in a nice little comfortable setting. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get underway. Hopefully this one will be a nice early mark for you as well. What we're going to learn about in part one is a thing called the creative funnel, which is you're going to learn about getting discovered, how you get found, how you build trust, how you deepen the relationships with people on a platform like LinkedIn in a much more organic way. We're not looking at any ads whatsoever. All this is completely organic. The second part, we're going to talk about growing your following through a method I call soft outreach, which certainly worked for me in the last 12 months, strategic outreach, which was my second way that I sort of moved on it. And then the third way, which is content-led growth, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So what you find is initially you might grow super fast and then things slow right down until finally you then jump in from one method of outreach to the next method of outreach to get the right kind of approach you want to get to continue that growth and not stagnate too much. I've got lots of badges. I'm not going to go too heavily into all those. One of them is that I'm a certified LinkedIn Marketing Labs professional, which means I know how LinkedIn works in terms of how to reach people in the way that you want to reach them. So thank you for joining me today. Now, the creator funnel is the first thing we're going to look at. And the creator funnel is a way of saying it's kind of like a sales funnel, but what you're doing instead of dragging people down a predetermined path by clicking on links and filling out forms, what you're doing is getting people used to you, getting them to know you, getting them used to liking you. And then finally, after they know you and like you, the most important step is that they actually trust you. They're going to trust you enough to be able to buy something from you, for order things from you, something like that. So the creator funnel works like this. You start at the top by creating some significant attention. That's the first step. The second step is you want to build trust in your expertise. You want people to be able to trust you enough to say, hey, I feel like I can work with you. I feel like I feel confident in working with you. The deepening of the relationships happens when they go beyond just going, yeah, I'm trusting in your expertise and I really understand who you might be and what you're kind of doing. But I also want to see that I want to know more. I want to be able to see deeper inside that expertise. And finally, you need some sort of method at the end of it all to create income. When you're creating income, I'm talking about having something you can sell them, some sort of method by which you can turn someone who's viewing some content on social media or on your website or even on a podcast or a YouTube channel into some method of income at the end of it. So this is what we're going to go through initially through those steps, starting off with how I managed to do it in this past, I think 10 months now. So we're towards the end of November. So about 11 months I've been doing this. January 1st, 2022, I put this into practice and the content funnel into practice after learning it from a guy called Justin Welsh, who is a bit of a master at this kind of stuff. He's one of the most influential people on LinkedIn at the moment and very, very well known and for being, very early in the game with LinkedIn and trying this method out very, very early. And he still uses it to this day. I can still follow through his content and see, oh, it's that sort of thing. Oh, I can see what you've done there. So January 1, 2022, I set myself a task. I wanted to double the amount of followers I had on LinkedIn. At the time, I had about 150. Not that many, but I thought, you know what? It'd be nice to get some more. If I get 300, I'll feel happy with that. It's gone way beyond that now. I'm on to just over 5,500 followers now, with about nearly 4,000 connections, direct connections. So that grew remarkably in that time. What I got was, as part of that, from the stuff I was posting, I got an increase of 3,677%, 67% increase in engagement. Now that sounds very impressive, but you got to remember I was coming from a very low place. Very few people were seeing my stuff and I wasn't doing particularly good stuff at the time either. I really wasn't quite sure what I was doing. What this did at the end of the road, and this is where you've got to have a really solid plan in place and a goal in place for where you want to go with it. I gained $27,000 in extra revenue that I otherwise wouldn't have got this year simply because, and this is before June 30. So this is not even counting since then. The first half of the year, having that content funnel in place generated real extra revenue by selling extra workshops, by selling extra one-to-one consultations, by selling things like, websites, all those kind of things. So that was a really important thing for me to go, yeah, you know what? I've done particularly well in this. I feel really good about it. Now, that's my story. Your story could be completely different depending on what it is you want to do and what you want to achieve. So all stories for us begin with creating significant attention. That's what we call the top of our creative funnel. That's where we're going to draw people in with some compelling content on social media. So how does that look? Well, attention comes from better content. So you want that significant attention, you need better content. You need stuff that's going to read much better to people and attract them more often. Better content, though, comes from having a real plan in place to get that content. And the whole thing is going to take time. It's not like I opened up on January 1 and by January 15, I was raking in the cash. It certainly was not like that at all. It wasn't until probably around about, late April, early May that the real bookings started to come in. So that $27,000 extra I'm talking about, that all came in very much like towards the end of that first 6 months. So it wasn't like, it came in very, very suddenly in 1 month. It didn't. It took a while to get going, but when it did come in, it really came in a rush at the point where it actually overwhelmed me with the work, and I had to sort of shut things down for a bit to slow things down because I didn't have the staff to be able to take on that extra work. So just remember, you need better content. Better content comes from a plan. We're going to look at that plan in a sec, and make sure you have enough time and consistency in place to be able to support this. You can't do this for 3 weeks and get sick of it. It does require a little bit of discipline. And this plan has certainly given me that discipline to make sure I've always got something coming out every day that follows this plan. I either schedule it in advance to make sure I'm doing that. And I do it across, Facebook as well, and LinkedIn and Instagram, and I put it onto Google Business Profile as well. I'm not just doing this on LinkedIn, but by far, like 90% or more of the leads I'm getting are coming from LinkedIn. I'm a business to business after all. I don't sell to consumers, I sell to business owners. So LinkedIn's obviously my best channel. But this same kind of thing can be put in place on Twitter, on Facebook, on any kind of social media, including in some of the things we're doing later on. We're going to show you how to sort of give like 5 or 6 different kinds of content that will sort of generate sort of endless ideas for writing stuff. That will also work as the basis for any videos you want to make. So if you want to talk to videos, do live videos, do pre-recorded videos, do TikToks, any of that sort of stuff, you'd be able to generate those topics from there as well. So attention, it comes from better content. How does better content happen? Better content is content that creates value. When we say creates value, it sounds like a marketing buzzword, and it kind of is. Well, it's all about helping people for free. No strings attached. You're just helping them for free. You answer questions. You build tools that help people out. You share your expertise. Eventually, what's going to happen is when you are doing all this online, someone's going to ask you for more. Now, a word of warning on this: you might hear from people saying, oh, but you're giving away everything for free. You're giving away all your IP, your intellectual property away for free. I can guarantee you there's very little that you do that can't be Googled. They can't work out. People will work it out for themselves if they really, really want to. And if you don't offer that information for free, someone else is going to do it after all. So it's not as if I started shutting down all my webinars and didn't tell people how to do things for free, that they wouldn't work it out for themselves eventually. But the problem is that people don't have time. It's a massive learning curve to do all this stuff by yourself. So what you find is that people then need a guide. And you want to be that guide. You want to be the person who they come back to and say, hey, is there any way I can pay you for this? Now, you might go, oh yeah, people aren't going to do that. People aren't going to pay for my expertise. You would be surprised when you do something that's really simple for you that you can do in your sleep. People will pay for that because they can't do it in their sleep. They can't do it in their waking hours. They don't have the time to do it. So that's where you're going to sell those premium services at the end. So helping people for free with no strings attached and sharing that expertise and answering those random questions that come through all builds what is called a personal brand. It makes you able to be so much more available and so much more useful to them than anyone else. So that when they really need that thing, that professional help, well, you're right there to help them out. Attention comes from better content, especially when it's distributed in the places where people are consuming that content. We're talking about LinkedIn mostly, but it could be Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest, Google business profiles, any place where people happen to gather, including that newer network. Not really that new, but it's become really quite popular lately. Mastodon, and Mastodon is like a clone of Twitter almost. There's another one called PixelFed, which is a open source federated, which means it's on various lots of different servers and controls all over the place. It's a version of Instagram for people who got angry with Instagram. There's lots of these networks everywhere. You just got to pick the ones that are right for you. You go where your people are. For me, my people are on LinkedIn, but increasingly, my people are also on YouTube and on Twitter and on TikTok as well. So in the next few months, I need to make some big efforts into those platforms, not just LinkedIn, where my efforts been for all of this last 12 months. What a great 12 months it's been, though, I tell you. It was definitely worth the attention and time I put into it. What expertise or information can you offer? To think about that. What do you know that you're either maybe better than other people at, or that you maybe have the bit of an unfair advantage to others with because you grew up with this, so it's really super, super easy for you? What things that you do that people come and ask you for? Like if you're at work and someone just taps on your shoulder and says, hey, can you help me with this? The things you're very much known for. People just go, you are the guru at this, or you're the expert at that. You're the go-to girl, the go-to guy for all these kinds of things. Have a think about that, even write them down if you must. Because sometimes that thing that you're really good at that you find super easy, people really will pay for it. One example will be is copywriting. Copywriting is basically writing for attention and for a purpose. So it's not like a novel where you're writing something which is its purpose is really just to get you to read the whole book. I'm talking about the sort of things that are written in the pages of websites, the kind of things that are written on emails that go out to people, the kind of things that go into brochures and magazines and that kind of stuff. We're talking about convincing, compelling writing that's really there to kind of convince people to do something. Motivate them to read more, motivate them to book something, motivate them to buy something, motivate them to respond or engage or like or share or comment, those kind of things. So if you look at that and go, okay, what can I do that will do that? What's the thing that I do that can generate that kind of thing? So have a think about what that is and we'll kind of carry that forward. Myself, I chose to niche down on 2 topics. So I can do 15 things really well and do them all over the place. I can make WordPress websites, Joomla websites, websites on like probably about 10 different platforms that I could speak quite easily about that most people don't know the answers to questions that I do. I know how to do branding. I know how to do marketing. I know how to do Facebook ads, Instagram ads, LinkedIn ads, Pinterest ads, Spotify ads, Google ads, YouTube ads. But what I chose to do was something that I get asked about all the time, which is social media, which is my general area of expertise, and I'm quite known for that across the country, or personal branding, which is something I've been doing a lot of myself, and people had noticed that, and now they're asking for assistance in that as well. I can tell you now, an overweight, balding, middle-aged guy with a grey beard and tattoos, if he can personally brand himself, so can you. I can tell you, it's one of those challenges. You don't have to be hot. You don't have to be pretty. You don't have to be the most hot person in the room in order to have this personal brand. You're not trying to be a Bali influencer under a waterfall after all. What you're trying to be is someone who is known as the expert in the room when it comes to what you do. So that's what we're aiming for. Better content then has to come from a strategy. You must have a plan to get yourself there. So the plans that we use is these 4 kinds of outcomes that we want to get. So when you're writing stuff on LinkedIn, think about, are you writing something that teaches someone something? Because these are the 4 major areas that people are looking for. Is this person teaching me something? Is this person entertaining me? Is this person making me think? Is this person someone who I feel really gets me and understands me? They're the 4 things we're really looking for in content that comes online. Something that teaches you, something that makes you laugh or entertains you and keeps your eyes glued to the screen, something that is thought-provoking, makes you go, that's really cool. Or is it just that you're looking for someone to show that they actually get what your problem is and you might actually be someone who can help them. So as a business on LinkedIn for yourself, whether you are the business or whether you want your brand of your business to be what comes forward, made more so than you, understand that these are the four kinds of things that people are really seeking when they go online. Once you got that in there, it really narrows down the kind of stuff you're going to write. And with our 6 point questions we're going to look at a little bit later on in this webinar, you're going to understand how to apply those and use those in order to get those four outcomes. Then we'll cover more about how to do that in part two, I think. I've got that already. Thank you. The second part of the content funnel is about building trust in your expertise. And this is done by communicating adequately that you know what you're doing. You want to move from someone going, oh, I recognize you because I've seen you on these videos. Oh yeah, I recognize you because I've seen your LinkedIn profile. Right through to then, I actually trust you because you really know what you're talking about. And that whole idea of really knowing what you're talking about, a lot of it comes from confidence. So the way you present yourself, I know I get told all the time is that you're so convincing because you seem so confident in what you're saying. But I'll tell you what, that's because I've done the work behind it. I've done all the work like you have, like you've done with your career and the things that you do. You've done a lot of work to get to where you are and the level of knowledge you've got, which is why you're trying to build a brand on LinkedIn right now. So you're moving. So it makes sense that someone's going to move from, you know what, I like this person through to now, I trust what they've got to say because they really do know what they're talking about. The deeper trust, though, doesn't come from social media posts. The deeper trust comes from your longer format content. So we're talking about things like a longer format weekly or monthly newsletter. I've got one that goes out to nearly 10,000 people every Saturday morning. You think, why would you send it out on a Saturday morning, a business thing? Well, it's because people not generally in their businesses on a Saturday morning, particularly the kind of businesses that I'm targeting. They're, Monday to Friday, solopreneurs doing consulting work and personal branding, and graphic designers. They don't tend to work on Saturday mornings. So the newsletter format for me is a killer. From LinkedIn and your newsletter, between the two of those, they represent well over 90% of all the activity for new businesses coming into me. You wouldn't think so, but it is. How-to content. So it could be like an ebook, for instance. So a downloadable ebook of 10, 20 pages, which goes into depth about a particular area of expertise you have. That's the stuff that's going to come in to build that trust. Because if you've got a newsletter that comes out every week and it's got a certain amount of words in it and it covers one topic really well, or you've got a downloadable ebook, which also goes into a lot of depth and is very useful for people who are trying to learn something valuable to them, then that's the sort of stuff that you're going to get that's going to make such a difference. Then there's the videos. So if you have longer format videos, usually on YouTube, that's where most longer form videos seem to be and where they get watched. That's a place where you can go, yeah, I can see that you really know what you're doing. And depending on whether, the topic you're talking about is in high demand or not, you can very, very quickly be recognized as someone who's a very important person. And then you've got the webinar, or what could be just as easily called like a Facebook Live, something like that. So if you've got a Facebook Live, or you're doing a LinkedIn Live, or a Twitter Live, or a whatever live video you want to do, or you're doing a webinar, for instance, like this one we're doing tonight, I tell you what, these webinars are a great way of showing people that you know what you're talking about. Because if you can come onto a webinar and adequately and clearly explain what you're doing, it's all very, very personal. Even though it's only one-way communication, like we're live now, I'm like, slap my face, pinch myself. Yeah, it's definitely live. And I can see Kim and Stella. I can see several other people. Yep, all people in here as well. So you know it's live. But it feels so much more personal when there's someone actually on a webinar who can interact with you. Like, for instance, now, either of you can now ask a question, any one of you on the call, and there's about 57 of you all up, who can ask a question right now and say, oh yeah, I want to ask this question, I would answer it live. So that kind of thing really does add to the credibility of who you are. If it's not like this those robo recorded webinars where you get in and there's like they're pretending that they're live. It's like, oh, I see David and I see Adam, and oh yes, we've got someone coming in from Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's just, and it's kind of fake because this same webinar happens every 15 minutes, and there's not enough people on the earth who have been seeing this webinar enough times that they would be doing it live every time. That's definitely not that. What this is just an opportunity for you to interact with people in a live way, and a way for you to, there's nothing like testing someone's knowledge in a live environment by asking them questions. So yeah, feel free to ask me those questions if you'd like to, or sit back and enjoy it, because we're going to go a little bit deeper into this trust coming from longer content. So the goal of longer content is to communicate through to someone that you have deep knowledge in your area of expertise, that you really know what you're doing. You know enough for someone to trust that you know what you're doing. That's a really important factor, because if you've got a high ticket item, if you're trying to sell something that's well over $1,000 or even well over $100, people want to know that they're putting their money into the hands of someone who's going to be a good steward of that money. And ultimately, what you want to do as a consultant or as someone who is working to grow this familiarity with your clients is you want to take it off social media. You want to take it to a place where you can have a conversation with them. It could be on your phone. It could be through Facebook Messenger. It could be in a group chat, or it could be text messaging or WhatsApp or any of those things you can communicate through. It could be even a chat that happens in one of our channels on the chat here right now. So what you ultimately want to do is show that you got that knowledge, show that you can be trusted, and then take the conversation somewhere else. Because you don't want to be, relying upon the algorithms of Facebook or LinkedIn or any of those in order to have the conversation you want with people. It's far too easy for people to block, accidentally block, get cut off, and never come back. And once they're off that hot motivation period where they really, really want to work with you and be able to question you and see what you do, they may never ever come back. Because you know what it's like. Life happens. How many times have you left something in an online shopping cart before where you haven't gone through with the purchase because life happened? The kids are screaming and trying to kill each other, or the kettle boiled, or someone knocked on the door, or the phone call came through, or something important came through from work and you completely forgot what you were doing. When you take it off social media, you can continue that conversation at any point you like. If they disappear from you today, you can check in with them tomorrow morning and say, hey, we got cut off yesterday. Are there any questions you had to ask? And they can come back and say, oh yeah, I'm so sorry. My mother-in-law dropped around and things just went to hell and high water after that. That deeper trust comes from longer content. And we want to be able to own the audience once they've read that longer content. So ultimately, you want to get them off social media and into your blog, into your podcast, into your YouTube videos, into anything else but on LinkedIn itself. Because you have limits to what you can do on LinkedIn. You have limits to the amount of exposure you can have to someone. And there's limits to, if something happens to your LinkedIn, for instance, say for instance, someone reports you are being spammy or scammy or something like that. They just want to get rid of you because they're in competition with you. And next thing you know, you can't get into your account, or you've been hacked or something like that. Been hacked in LinkedIn, it's great to know you've already got that conversation with that customer over on Messenger or on your phone or on WhatsApp or on any sort of other chat app other than chatting inside LinkedIn. So I like to be able to take my conversations out of the DMs and into somewhere where I can have a bit more control over what's going on. The next thing we're going to do is deepen that relationship. We're going to take that relationship with someone and deepen it by having direct kind of access to each other. Deeper relationships are about how much access you get to them. Think about it when you're dating. Say you're dating someone. First date, they don't have a lot of access to you because you're only just sort of getting to know each other. But as that relationship deepens and you fall in love, suddenly you've got a lot more access to each other. And I'm talking in terms of the time access, but also physical access as well. Because as you become more familiar with someone, you become more intimate with someone. The same thing happens with the content journey that happens on LinkedIn. As someone gets to know you more, they become more, attached to what you're doing. They become, more willing to pay for your time, which means they want to pay for access to you. So if you go from, say, for instance, this webinar and you get off at the end and you say, okay, I've got a couple of hours left of my digital solutions program. I like this guy. I want to talk to him more. You'll then go into your portal, you'll book yourself in and book an hour session with me. That's taking and deepening that relationship, because we're taking it to a place where it's much more personal. It's just you and I. Deep relationships take place either in small group settings. So they call them masterminds. If you've ever come across one of those, they can happen in things like BNI groups, like networking groups, where they're closed networks, where there's only one person from each kind of business in the game. So you're not being completely overrun with people who are all plumbers, for instance, when you're a plumber. Facebook groups are also really good places for those relationships to deepen because you can privately message each other in the groups, but you can also do public things where you're participating in conversations, not with the whole world, but just with the people who are also in that group who are probably in the same boat as you. They take place in personal one-to-one meetings. So when you're catching up with each other, shaking hand, I call it shaking hands and kissing babies. It's one of those things where you're able to, I guess, meet someone one-to-one, face-to-face, have a coffee. Though be careful of coffee catch-ups because quite often someone will say, "Oh, hey, can I take you out the coffee? I really want to pick your brain on something." What they're essentially doing is paying for an hour of your time with a $5.50 coffee. That's not a lot to be paid for an hour, is it? So you've got to be careful that you're not overdoing those, not offering too many of those, because $5.50 is certainly not a living wage to be growing up. You're not a 14-year-old with their first job at Macca's. You need to be making sure that you're getting the money that you deserve to be paid for. If people are constantly picking your brain, you may need to pull that back a bit. Even though it does deepen the relationship, be aware of the coffee brain pickers because they are possibly going to look at you and just go, you're a source of free information for them. They're going to milk you for everything that you've got for free until the day where you ask for money and they magically don't need your help anymore. Funny that, huh? Funny that. You deepen the relationship in order to see how someone thinks, to see how they act, to see how they tick, how they work, whether you have a compatibility in the way you work, or whether you look at, you have that one-to-one time with them and you go, holy heck, he's chaos. I don't want to work with him. He's absolute chaos. He's batshit crazy. Something like that. You don't want that to come up too far into the relationship. So you want to have a chance to get to know that. Think about it like dating. You don't marry someone on first sight, despite the TV show. You're not really marrying someone on first sight. You go through a period of trying to work out what they're like, how they think, how they act in different situations, how they work, what makes them tick. And that's how you develop and deepen that relationship with someone. And they want to deepen the relationship with you because ultimately they really want to work with you. They really want what you've got. They've been attracted to whatever it is that you do and the expertise you have. They might like your personality, they might like your approach. And they want to sort of, they want to grow their knowledge, they want to grow their abilities. So they find that the way to do that is through you. They want to see whether there's enough in common that you have that you could actually work together on a project, whether it's building a website, doing some social media posts, whether it's whatever you happen to do, whether you're selling candles, whether you're selling your lessons, whether you're selling consultation sessions, all those kinds of things. They want to know that they can get on with you, particularly in those areas where you're dealing with the personality. Let's just say like neurolinguistic programming practitioners. Too many words in there for that. But if you're doing timeline therapy or you're doing hypnotherapy, those kind of things, you're dealing with people's very intimate parts of their lives. They want to know that they can feel like they trust you, but also they want to feel like you're kind of someone who's there for them in a deeper way than just simply selling them a product or a service. And finally, they're looking to you as a little bit of a star, a little bit of a celebrity, maybe. I've been told so many times by my minder at Business Station, Agatha, she likes to say to me, "Oh, you're a celebrity, mate. Everyone seems to know you everywhere I go. Everyone knows you." And I'm like, that's kind of cool and kind of weird in a way. But I look at it and go, ultimately, it's a very good thing for me to be seen that way by them because then there's value that's attached to that. People will honestly want to catch up with you if they can see that you can explain your concepts so well and you're a good trainer and people really rave about you, then you are a little bit of a celebrity in that circle. So just accept that, they see you as someone special, and that's kind of a special relationship to have. There's a lot of responsibility and a lot of great stuff that comes from someone seeing you as the expert in your game. And finally, at the bottom of that creative funnel, we create the income. And this is very important because quite often we get caught up in the funnel itself and all the wonderful things in there, but we don't actually create a chance for you to make money. Monetization or making some sort of money at the end of this funnel, it's so much easier because you've reached a level of trust where people are much more willing to hand over their cash. That increased level of trust, that captive audience you've now got, that poor private setting, so someone feels like a little bit more reassured that they're not going to be felt like feeling like a fool by asking that question in public. And there's no algorithms that are going to stop you from seeing each other. You don't have to worry about your posts not reaching them because you're not communicating with them in posts anymore. You're communicating with them directly through phone, through email, through chat, all those things. So it doesn't really matter. They don't have to see your content anymore because you have a really increased and elevated level of trust with them. When you're creating that income, then what can you do? How can you create that income? You might want to do one-to-one consultations that people book in with you. You may want to do some paid workshops in a group setting. Maybe you've got a system you've built, which is really good. I quite often will sell like Microsoft Excel templates that do certain things, particularly my layout for my content plan. But I also used to sell a holidays and awareness day calendar, which was also on Excel. There's nothing to stop someone from forwarding that to all their friends, and I'm sure they often did. But it's still like that made me probably about $500 a year just to do that. It took me about an hour to update every year because the days are usually the same every year, one year after the other. So about an hour of updating, I make about $550 at the beginning of the year and a little bit during the year as well. And that was awesome. But what I would also do then is charge a subscription. I don't do this anymore because it became too big a beast for me. I charge a subscription to people to get the updates during the year. So as January would end, then we go into what is happening in January of next year and the right kind of date. So it'll be a month by month update about what's happening 12 months in advance. It was a great idea and it sold really well. I made about $550 a year out of it, and that was fine for an hour's work every year. Didn't mind it. I maybe did probably 3 or 4 hours originally setting it up. $550, overall over 5 years. You do the maths. It actually works out to be not a little real big money spinner, but it's enough for me to go, that's worth my time. Your online courses is a big area these days. I've got a few free ones that I'm delivering at the moment in lieu of me finally getting together, my big courses for the things I'm particularly very good at. Some of the things you won't get for, a free workshop through the digital solutions program, for instance, a lot more depth, a lot more personal experience going into that, and a lot more recommendations for exactly what you should do, backed up with paid workshops that go along with that online course. So it means you've got a bit of a bit more of a chance of getting those things done in a hybrid fashion. So how it works for me at the moment, I work on a number of monetization fields. So the first one is what I call the free for them, paid for me. So this is an example of this webinar. It's free for you to attend this webinar, but I get paid for it. So Business Station and the Australian government ensure that I get paid for this. So it's not the $44 that you paid to be part of digital solutions. It's something which I get paid what my rate is. Then I back that up with what I call premium one-to-one consultations. So through Business Station, I can have consultations coming in, those 3 of them. So there'd be, consultation 1, 2, 3, and then you need to do something else. So you might then do, oh, I want to keep working with you. Can I buy another 3? And then I'll sell those next 3 to you at what my rate is. And I do a discount for people who've come through digital solutions. So that's another way that I get a little bit of extra money dropping into my account each week. Corporate workshops are a bit of like a low-hanging fruit. Corporates and governments and not-for-profits are always looking for people to do things with them. I'm doing something with Palmerston City Council in the Northern Territory this weekend where I'm hosting a entrepreneurship workshop. So that's a corporate workshop. I often do corporate workshops for institutes and for government agencies and government departments as well, particularly for the departments of business and sometimes the investment departments that are do with bringing in foreign and interstate outside investment into those jurisdictions. Custom training. So it's going a little bit further than just the corporate workshops. You're providing a custom training course for people. It could be over a series of 5 or 6 weeks. It could be delivered online as well. So you're not just doing your online course, you're doing an online course for them, and they're paying you to do that. They may pay for you to give it to them, and they keep it. That's fine. Charge extra for the release of that material to them, or they might just pay you to host that. Can you put together a training session for this particular system that we know and that our people are using, and you just host it over there and just charge, just give us an invoice every month to be hosting that online course. And then there's the done for you services. So an example that would be you're a graphic designer, you go and build a flyer, you go and build a letterhead, you go and build a new branding package for someone. but you are an expert in that area. So what you're usually doing on one sense, let me line up my hands right. In one sense, you're over here doing the expertise work where you're telling people how to do it themselves. But then they go, no, I want someone to do it for me. Can you do it for me? Oh, yes, I can. Over this hand, I'm also the provider who will make this happen for you. I'll build that website. I'll do that social media campaign. I'll design your Facebook ads. I will design the flyer. I will make the jewelry. You don't have to do it yourself. Over here, you can then hand it over. And then through my other hand, I've got a service that does this thing for you. So they're the combination that works for me. It might be different for you. I use attention grabbing content on these social media platforms, which then leads through to my own properties where I've got much more in-depth content. So I might post something on LinkedIn that then goes through to my newsletter and says, hey, to read more about this, get tomorrow's newsletter. It'll come out on Saturday morning at 8 a.m., which is when my newsletter tends to come out. The free for them, paid for me model, it comes through the government programs I'm part of, like this one, Digital Solutions, and the entrepreneurship facilitators as well. And I monetize those then when they come out of that by offering, one-to-one appointments, online courses, and paid workshops as well. So not just the free ones I'm always doing, there's paid workshops as well that people can attend to go into a lot more. So you will find your combination around the certain skills and the resources that you have. So you don't really need to worry too much about, doing my thing. You'll find your combination through what you're capable of doing. And if you need more help with that, that's where the Digital Solutions program can help out. Now we go into part 2, which is growing that following of yours. This is giving you a chance to get more followers, get more influence, get in front of more eyeballs. And ultimately, you want to do that because if the right people are then watching your content, they're the right people to be suggesting you to the people that they know that they can't help. You don't have to be having customers following you. This is where we all fall down. We have to have this idea that the people have to be following us and looking with us every day that are our potential customers. The kind of people who are digging up all your free content all the time are probably not the people who are ever going to pay for that content. But those kind of people will refer you to other people and talk about you to other people, particularly when you've been able to help them out with something quite deep. There was a lady today who sent a lovely message to me saying about how, I've made it so much easier for her to understand her Facebook today because of a workshop that I hosted a little bit earlier today, that she said, I've just told all my friends who I just had lunch with about you, and don't be surprised if you get a few calls. I've already had messages come through from 3 of the ladies at that lunch because she said such a glowing report about me. Now, she will never use my paid services. She got exactly what she needed for my free stuff, but then she now has referred that on. So that growing that following is not about having customers following you or clients follow you. It's having the kind of people who have access to the kind of people you want to get access to, but you don't currently have access to. So we use 3 main areas to do that: soft outreach, strategic outreach, and content-led outreach. So let's have a look at what they look like. Soft outreach is all about what I call the follow, familiarize, and formalize. So you follow that person, you familiarize yourself to them, and then you formalize the connection after that. So we're going to deal with those 3 F's in there. So the example with Richard here, Richard had an awesome, came up as because someone who I'm connected to in the UK is connected to him. And he's talking about his son, Jack, who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And by the time he starts secondary school, he's expected to be in a wheelchair. But today was his sports day and there was nothing that was going to stop him being part of it. So well done, Jack. We're so proud of you. I looked at that and thought that was so inspirational, something really worth looking at, that I then clicked follow and decided to follow this guy. At which point I then said, so wonderful to see that kind of determination at a young age and considering his circumstances. Thank you so much for sharing this. So what I've done with Richard, I've stayed very much in touch with his content as I see it come through and how he talks about his kid as well. And then continually making sure I'm in there. Now, one day Richard came back and he said, oh, we're not connected, are we? And he messaged, I've known you for so long on here. I didn't realize that we weren't connected. So what I did then was I sent a connection request. And I'd love to know how I can support this initiative more. So hi, Richard. Thanks for the wonderful stories you share here on LinkedIn about Jack. I'd like to know if how I can support yours and Jack's journey in some way. I'd love to connect and chat more about it. So I've sent that through. And what he was saying is like really what he really like, he's got a foundation called Backing Jack. And what it does doesn't just back Jack, but it also educates others and provides services for others with a Duchenne muscular dystrophy issue as well. So I went, okay, that's something I can get behind. What can I do? He said, oh, you can spread the word for us. There's donations you can make. If you know people, you can introduce us to. And then I go out to my network then and look for others who might be able to support Jack and Richard in what they're doing. That's what self outreach is. I started off by following someone who I found interesting or who I find might have found as someone who might know some people who I don't know. I'd like to expand some of my coverage into the UK. So I look at that and go, oh, maybe I could spend some time getting to know a few other people in the UK and get into their networks, which I've now done with Richard, who introduced me to James, who is now one of my clients. So this sort of thing does happen. It does work, but you've got to stop thinking that you've got to just try to chase potential customers. You don't. It's a network. With networking, you don't actually find customers within the network. You find customers from the people who are in the network, the people they know. And then that goes out further too. It's like a concentric circles. In the core is the people in the network. Out there is the people that they know, the people in the network. And then out further is the people in the network know who they know. So that's like and that's when you're getting to millions of people potentially starting to see your stuff. So that's a soft outreach. With strategic outreach, it's a little bit different. It's the I's because it's all about you taking control of something. So identify, initiate, and introduce. So very, very similar. You identify someone who you think through the My Network tab, who you think might be someone you really want to connect with because you want to know more about them. You think they might be someone who's connected to a network, which is a very good network for you to be part of. In this case, I spotted Liam Daly. And his headline there, I'm someone who loves helping people make. And I was like, I can't see everything you were saying there. I really want to click on that and see it. So I went across and looked at what Liam does. Okay, Liam, I'm someone who loves helping people make the changes they want to make and an all-round good guy from Mum in 1992. Hey, he's got a really good sense of humor. He actually knows a couple of people that I'm connected to. So Agatha, Mark, I know both of those people. One of them I know very well. So I'm like, oh, okay. So if he's connected, he must be worth connecting to. So what I'm going to do here is go, okay, we have a common connection. I'm going to add a note to invite him. So I'm going to invite him and I'm going to go, hi, Liam. I'm looking to increase my Sydney-based connections on LinkedIn. We've had some connections in common, particularly, and I referenced the person that we have in common that I know quite well. So I thought I'd reach out. If that's okay, please accept my connection. If not, I won't be offended if you don't, but have a great week ahead. Now, in this conversation I'm starting to have, I'm making it clear that we have connections in common. So I thought it was worth reaching out. And I'd like to be able, and I'm actually trying to increase my presence in Sydney. I'm trying to increase my Sydney-based connections. So if I'm trying to do that, then he knows that I'm trying to grow my network, but he's also looking at that going, maybe I need to grow my network into the Northern Territory as well. Well, you never know. It's an open field here. It's like a green field where anything is possible. So why wouldn't you necessarily do that? So that's what is the identify, initiate the conversation by finding out what's going on in there, and then finally introducing yourself to that person. That's a very strategic thing, remembering that you're not doing it to chase down customers, you're doing it to connect to people who may have access to who your customers are. In my case, I'm looking not necessarily for customers through here, I'm looking for connections with people who are already connected to people who I respect and who are in that area that I know is very, very vital for me to be part of. So, yep, he's connected to Agatha, so therefore I went with him. Strategic outreach can happen in a few ways. You can you can write it. You can also record audio. So on your phone in the app for LinkedIn, you can record an audio message that goes to that person, which might be a little bit more friendly and a bit more engaging than what a written message would be because they have to click on it to hear what that is. And the curiosity will kill the cat. The curiosity will make them want to click on that and listen to it. But you can also, through various means, have an introduction video. So you actually have a video introduction. So, hey, I'm Dante. I really want to connect with you because we know Agatha in common. I don't know how well you know her, but I work with her through Business Station. And I think she's an awesome, awesome person. I've heard her mention your name before, so I was quite curious and wanted to sort of see who you are. But I guess most of all, I'd love to see what your content's like on LinkedIn. I'm really looking forward to seeing some of your stuff. And hey, feel free to ask me any questions along the way as well. Always happy to throw a few free tips here if there's something I've got that you'd want to know about. So that is exactly what you could do as an open greeting. It took me 30 seconds to do that. 30 seconds to record, off it goes. Much more engaging and much more friendly than simply writing something. So you can try that with your introduction. Use video or audio, not just something written. The final one, which is what I'm doing right now, is the content-led outreach. This is where you react, you respond, and you reach out. See, I've gone with all these things that have got the alliteration. I've really thought long and hard about these. Reactions, respond, and reach out. So the reactions are that I'm watching for people who are reacting to my stuff. So this is people who are commenting and reacting to my stuff on LinkedIn, the things that I'm producing on there. So while I'm watching for those, I then go, okay, I found one. Now what I'm going to do is respond to the comment or react to it myself. What this does, it helps the algorithm go, so not only are you someone who produces content that people comment on, but you're also commenting on the comment. You're starting conversations. One of the best pieces of advice I've seen on LinkedIn, I'm yet to really put it into practice, is from a guy called Roman Pikolenko, who's a guy in Eastern Europe who's now developed a really solid following, particularly of young people who are looking to work on their personal brand on platforms specifically like LinkedIn. He's a great guy. He wears flamingo stuff. He's just known for his obsession with flamingos. He's the flamingo chief. And that's what he's known. He's got a great personal brand. So what he does, he treats every response to a comment like another post of its own. So as if like he's not just saying, hey, thanks for responding, I appreciate it. He says, thanks for responding. Was there anything, what was the reason why you really got something out of this? I'm really interested to know because we all get curious about what it is that makes people want to click on our stuff. And so he start a conversation, and then all of a sudden that one interaction that just becomes a comment and then becomes a long thread of back and forth where people are having friendly conversations. That tells the rest of the world, as well as the algorithm on LinkedIn, that you are a very responsive and very interactive person. And that's the kind of person they love to work with simply because they're the kind of people that make things happen. They're the kind of people who are really good connectors on LinkedIn as well. And they've got something to offer in terms of their expertise. So that sort of stuff really goes a long way to making you far more broad in your appeal across LinkedIn. And the final step in the content-led way is to reach out. You reach out to that person after you've had that interaction with them. You reach out to them privately and thank them for their contribution and asking for a connection so you can see more of their content too. So what I'm talking about is you've had that conversation. They may be following you. You may be following them. They're not necessarily connected to you, but you reach out to them privately and personally and say, hey, thanks so much for that conversation we had today. That was actually really thought-provoking and I really felt like I learned a lot. I'd love to be able to connect with you if you'd be open to that so I can sort of see a bit more of your stuff and hopefully interact a bit more. And they'll be feeling like it's a great big thrill for them because they're like, oh man, that's really nice. Like, I'd really love to do that. That'd be great. You're a great guy or a great girl. Then there's the content-led growth part of this. This is a bit of like an area 2.5. This is taking those connections and looking at growing your audience by doing a little bit more. And this is by doing the kind of content that you feel most comfortable with. You may be someone who's comfortable with writing, with photography, with video, or with audio. There's a place for all of those things across LinkedIn. You can do a text post. They still get amazing reach on LinkedIn. Photos, particularly more than one photo in a post, does particularly well. So does video, as long as the video is captivating and actually, grabs someone's attention and keeps that attention. And the audio thing, you can do audio lives on here. It's kind of like what if you ever came across Clubhouse. Instead of it being a live video, it's live audio. That no one sees you. You can only talk at the same time. Then you invite people into that. So it's like a live video, but it's you can invite people onto the stage to talk with you. You can interview them. They can become like a co-host of that. It's like a podcast, but live out on LinkedIn as well. I'm doing one in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm really looking forward to. It's on a Friday. We're going to talk about the problems that small businesses have and see how we can go with trying to solve some of those problems on a live radio show on LinkedIn. It's going to be fun. So there's then three different areas of the written stuff that I want to look at. We're not going to really go into the audio, into the video and the photos and all that. We're just going to look at the written stuff. There's three methods for writing: the problem, agitate, solution method, the problem, agitate, intrigue, positive future solution method, and then finally what is called now the 6 questions, not the 5 questions. So let's give those a start. Problem, agitate, solution. is where you state what the problem is that you're trying to, that the person who you're trying to reach wants to solve. Let's say, for instance, I don't have the time to manage all the software updates on my computer. So we go, okay, we know you don't have all the time that needed to update your computer with all the latest software and keep it safe. Then you make that problem worse by saying something like, well, if you don't keep things updated, you know you're subject to a lot of cybersecurity risks, and we've seen lately how that can cost companies absolutely millions in their entire reputation. Then we're going to offer them the solution. So we say, yes, you don't have time for all this, and there's a real danger that if you don't do this, you'll get hacked. The solution is to get a managed cybersecurity system from ABC IT, and we've got that in a package that suits business of all different shapes and sizes. So what you're doing is painting the problem that they're having. You're then making that problem feel a little bit worse before you give them that sweet relief of saying, "Hey, we've got that. We've got you covered. We can do this for you." So that's a very common, very classic way of writing a post on any social media and of writing ads as well. It's a really easy way to get that done. There's an expanded version we use called Problem Agitate Solution, Problem Agitate Intrigue Positive Future Solution. That's the one we'll look at next. But first, like, look at this one. Like, this Problem Agitate Solution one is all around about finding staff. So finding staff is a global problem. We state the problem. Now we make it worse. And when you find them, you need to spend 3 months training them. Oh, makes it feel worse. You're just twisting the knife, really, aren't you? But now you're about to give them the relief by saying our video training platform lets you do the training without wasting countless hours doing it. Isn't it beautiful? It just ties it up in a nice, neat bow at the end. Really simple to do. The bigger one then is the Problem Agitate Intrigue Positive Future Solution, which is PAPES for short, because you're just going to get sick of saying all those words. I'm lucky I can read them off a screen, so it's easier for me to remember. PAPES, P-A-I-P-S. You state the problem in exactly the same way. You make it even worse in exactly the same way as the PAS method, but then you're going to hint that there's a better way that they might want to consider. Then you state what it's going to feel like when they actually put that solution in place before you finally tell them the solution. So how does that look? Let's have a look at that same kind of thing. Finding staff is a global problem. And when you find them, you need to spend 3 months training them. There is a better way that won't involve you doing the training yourself. That's intriguing. A way that will give you back time for the things that are really important, like your family. You're going to feel great when you do this. Our video training platform lets you do the training once and use it for countless new employees. So you then see it's a story that's being woven around what you do. You don't just produce video training videos for help people to help train the new staff. You're actually helping them to deal with the fact that globally there's a shortage of labor and you don't have the time to train one, and you don't want to have to do it yourself all the time because you're sick of repeating the same stuff over and over and going to new staff all the time. And it's going to give you back time, which ultimately, as a business owner, you want that time back. You want to get back to your family of an evening before it gets dark. Well, a bit harder there, in the winter time. Now, this 5 questions just today got updated to 6 questions by the guy I'm talking about, Justin Welsh. So it says 5 questions on my webinar, but I just discovered today he's added a 6th. These questions you're going to ask is the things you want to write that become more familiar with people on LinkedIn. What can you teach them? What is something that you do that you could teach someone about? Now, you don't have to teach them how to do it. You just teach them about what that process is. Ever wondered why it takes so long for a graphic designer to come back with the perfect response to your brief? Well, here's why. And you explain the process of what it takes to get that work done. It costs this much because it takes you freaking hours. That sort of stuff is not easy to just bang out on Canva. You're talking about real graphic designers and graphic artists who do far more than just do a templated social media post on Canva. So what can you teach someone? Secondly, what have you noticed as you're moving about the world and you're doing the things that you're doing? What are some of the patterns you've noticed? What are some of the things that you've noticed? What are some of the feedback, the questions that people are asking? Bring that to a social post. So you go, oh, I was at a workshop today with a whole bunch of tourism people, and I noticed that they're all very positive right now, and mainly because it's our off season now. They've just come off a huge tourist season. It's their off season now, and they're getting ready for a big break over Christmas. And I've just noticed that that's the exact opposite of what happens in other parts of Australia. They're just getting ready for their peak season over summer, over the Christmas holidays. So then you're forming a story about things you've noticed around what you've done. And there's endless things you're going to do when you go to the office, when you talk to staff, when you talk to clients, when you're walking down the street, when you're walking along the aisles of Woolies and notice the prices are going up. You can talk to all of those things. Number three, how do you think differently? What is something that you have a different opinion than the norm for? That you think differently to someone else? Let's just say, for instance, people are always saying, it takes many fish to make a great fish gumbo. And you're saying, no, I think that you would do it better with one big fish. And you might be talking in a metaphor for business, like saying, you make a better business by having lots of little clients rather than one big client. And you're saying, well, no, actually, I've got a theory on this. I said, I'd rather have one big client than lots of little clients because I can serve them really well and really thoroughly. So I don't have to worry about losing them because they won't want to leave me because they love everything I do. So you might have a contrary opinion to what other people generally have who are in your industry. Be careful with these though, because it can make people a bit argumentative, and we don't want to go down that kind of argumentative path. Number four, what tips or tools can you deliver as a list? So that's saying the top 3 reasons why people get a graphic designer to do their more complex leaflets. The top 5 reasons why you should use a WordPress website over the competition. The three reasons why it makes sense to write a book if you want to get better known by people. So it's like those little lists. It's just little quick, short, sharp lists that people love to consume. They're really easy to consume. The 5th one is a story that's in reverse. How did this happen? So you start off by saying, this happened, and then you go, this is how we did it. So let's just say, for instance, we just landed our biggest client ever. They're worth more to us than probably 3 of our other clients in combination. But how did we manage to land them? Well, step 1, we did this. Step 2, we did that. So you're sharing your expertise and the ability to land clients and share your expertise on, the things you'll be working on that client with. If they're happy to have that talked about, you don't have to talk about who the client is necessary. It's just saying, we achieved this. Or it could be even a down story. So it's saying, hey, we lost a client last month, and here's how we believe we got it wrong. And you go, step 1, we weren't communicating as well as we could have. Step 2, we didn't return phone calls as quickly as we could have. Number 3, our reports were full of jargon and they couldn't understand what we're talking about. And all of this combined to our client not wanting to work with us anymore. Lesson learned, we move on and do better in the next one. So people like to see stories like that because it makes them feel that they're not the only person making mistakes. Finally, number 6, how it was and how it is. You quite often see how it started, how it's going. It started with a little puppy who was asleep in its bed, and then you got this gigantic Saint Bernard dog who's taking over your house and your yard and the whole neighborhood. In your case, it'll be, this is how we started and this is how we're doing, or it could be, this is how things used to be done and this is how they're now done. So posts like that could be, back in 1995 we thought that the yellow pages were the be all to end all. We spent $22,000 a year putting a yellow pages ad in to make sure we got new business, right? We didn't want to be that not happy Jan person. But now in 2022, it's a whole different game. We're advertising on Google, we're doing posts on LinkedIn and Facebook, and we're have much more control over the kind of ads we're doing. We don't have this one place where everything has to go. We've now got many places that different people can come in and see us with. So it's a comparison of how you used to do things and how you do them now, how other people used to do them in the past, how you do them now. It's a really compelling way of doing it. Now, if you'd like to know more about how to write better content, I've got the 5 of those things. I'm going to add a point 6 into that one very shortly. So give me about a week if you want to do that one. Pop to my website at dantestjames.com and you'll be able to go onto one of my free mini courses there. They are all free. Write better content, build your personal brand, and a new one that's not showing there, which is called Get Noticed, Get Booked. So please take advantage of those. They're absolutely free at dantestjames.com. I'd like to thank you for, this is what it looks like when you do. Just put in your email address. I'm not going to spam you after it. And you're not going to get extra emails after it. It's just the 5 or the 6 emails over 6 weeks that you'll get, and that's it. It ends there. I'm not going to spam you with offers and deals, and no one likes it when that. Jason James, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon / this evening, depending on where you are in Australia and when you're listening to this. You can contact me on any of those methods through Business Station, through my LinkedIn is probably the best place to get me. Pop in and have a look at those free mini courses I've got to offer. They can teach you a lot about it in a nice, easy to do way, and you do it all at your own pace. It's just delivered via email once a week for 5 or 6 weeks, and then you've got a new skill under your belt. Thank you again, and I hope you have a fantastic week.